Welcome, friend. It is I, your servant, Randall Terry. Welcome back to Insurrecta Nex. Listen to the words of John Paul II. It is therefore a service of love which we are all committed to, ensure to our neighbor that his or her life may always be defended and promoted, especially when it is weak or threatened. It's a service of love. You can't say, oh, I love the unborn, but you don't do anything. Oh, I love babies, but you don't do anything to serve them, to help them, to bring this Holocaust to an end. Because your actions speak louder than your words. And our silence screams a silent affirmation to the killers. Those words that we just looked at in the last episode, those were not the kind of things you said in polite company. Well, even worse in polite company were the images that the abolitionists showed to bring slavery to an end. Look at this image of this man's back, scarred, torn. This was revolting to look upon. Look at these other images. These images were not tasteful. They were not the kind of thing that you would want to see, but it was the horrid reality that had to be shown to shock people. Look at this picture of Frederick Douglass sitting next to a white woman. This enraged slaveholders, and it played to their worst fears. Frederick Douglass actually ended up marrying a white woman. And the true racists who believed that there had to be a separation of the races, that blacks were somehow an inferior race, this made them crazy seeing this. And as I quoted Joe Scheidler before, the abolitionists said, oh, that bothers you? Find out what irritates them and do only that. Now, there are people in the pro-life movement, well-meaning people, who are actually agreeing with the child killers and agreeing to not show pictures of aborted children. No, that is a recipe for defeat, and it plays into the hands of those who say that they're really not babies being killed. We have to show the images of aborted children, just like the abolitionists showed the images of slaves who had been beaten and mangled. I beg your pardon. Now, let's look at the actions. What did the abolitionists do? Now, the funny thing is that they actually took their life in their hands simply by preaching and writing and distributing pamphlets against slavery. So they, of course, ran the Underground Railroad. There were a few people that literally smuggled slaves from slavery in the South to freedom in the North. Heroes like Sojourner Truth, Levi Coffin. There were those who were buying slaves, who literally would raise money from people who loved freedom and would show up at the slave block, and their rhetoric and the images that they used, the things that they were saying were very edgy. If there was a really gorgeous black woman with long hair, you could imagine what they were saying that they were saving this woman from, because many of these slaves did, unfortunately, double duty. They were a private prostitute, if you will, a private slave mistress for the owner, as well as the work that they had to do in the day. So when you think of ending slavery, you have to remember that in that era, to print a pamphlet or a newspaper which decried slave traders and slaveholders, you were actually taking your life in your hands. So let's talk about some of the sacrifices. I want to focus on one man, a Presbyterian minister named Elijah Lovejoy, who ran a newspaper in a free state. And he had his press. He was the editor. As well as being a minister, he was an editor of the newspaper. And because he was writing against slavery, he had his press. They broke into his print shop, took his press, smashed it up, and threw it in the Mississippi River. He bought another press. He continued to publish editorials against slavery. They broke in and took that press, smashed it, threw it in the Mississippi. A third time it happened. On the fourth time, they bought a very expensive press from New York City. He had it shipped in and delivered in the middle of the night. The mayor gave them protection to protect the press, to protect the building with the use of force. So he had a group of people with him in the building protecting the press. The mob had found out that it arrived. The next day, they got people whipped up in the city. They started drinking and carrying on. After sunset, they came with torches and said, "Give us the press." Lovejoy was inside with some of his friends. They said, "We're not giving this press up, and the mayor has given us permission to fight." They shot at the building. Elijah and his friends returned fire. A bunch of the people on the outside were hit. One of them was killed. So now the mob is enraged. They take torches. They go and they set fire to the building where the press is. Lovejoy and one of his friends run outside, put the fire out, run back in. They set fire to the building again. Lovejoy runs out. This time they're waiting for him. They ambush him. Bang, bang. 5 shots. He takes 5 shots to his body. Staggers inside the building. Says, "I'm shot," and falls on the floor and dies. The next day, they take the press, smash it, and throw it in the river. And then at his funeral, the slave advocates were jeering and cheering when his procession walked by in a mockery of him. When you think what people went through to end slavery, and then compare that with the small prices that we have to pay to end child killing, there should be an embarrassment and a shame that comes over us. Because you can write, you can speak, you can use the internet, you can call talk radio. There's so many ways that you can promote the pro-life message, showing the images of the babies, saying this is murder, this is child killing, the blood of babies is crying from the ground, and yet we're afraid to do it. And when there's so little cost. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the end of child labor. Why you and I are never afraid that our little sons are going to die in a coal mine. I'm Randall Terry. This is Insurrecta Nex.